Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another article reading. And welcome back to a Patreon video. Thank you again for supporting me on this. I appreciate it. And essentially this week I did another random article reading. I feel like the last few I've kind of handpicked based off just kind of things that were happening. And I thought about doing a Bot and Kaitos one, but by the time you're hearing this, I think the monolith stuff will be kind of out of view. So maybe the next time when I like set up my Soma or do like a Soma Bringer video, maybe I'll try to coordinate something then. But so I did a random one, and the one that came up is Animal Crossing one actually, which is kind of an interesting one. There's a couple of stories behind this that I can tell before we actually read it. It is a shorter article, I will say, so I don't think it'll take us too long to get through it itself, so having those extra stories is good. And one thing you'll notice is that this is not on my website. This is actually on you can't see it on here, but it's on venturebeat.com. However, as you'll see with this little tag here, they say this post has not been edited by the GamesBeat staff. Opinions by the GamesBeat community and writers do not necessarily reflect those staff. That is not accurate, actually. So when GamesBeat had a thing where essentially you could submit articles, like without pitching anything, just completed articles, and they would select certain ones, and you would get the ad revenue that came from it. Not entire, it's like entirety, but like you can see in here, I think it's still connected. Like I still technically would get money from this if my ad revenue is set up, but I don't. Like you can see, it says advertisement here. I don't know how to like reactivate. Like I do still have my Google Ads account, and it still technically is live, and I could reactivate it. I just don't know exactly what I need to do, but essentially I could still be making money off this if it was getting any page views. I assume it is not though. But anyways, yeah, so you could actually submit articles and they would pick and choose, and they would do edits for you. So this was at some point touched by somebody at VentureBeat, and so essentially it was a community way to publish things. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not great at pitching things. A lot of the time I don't necessarily know where an article is going to go until I'm done writing it. So, that's kind of a bad thing in some ways, but it's also, I think it helps me stay flexible and making sure that like, as I explain myself, I don't lock myself into the one perspective I'm trying to get to. If I find halfway through the article that like, actually, I realize I feel differently about this, but like on the surface level, it felt like I felt another way because of some other reason. I try to remain open to that. Anyways, so I liked this format a lot, but they didn't like support it for super long. They picked up a handful of articles from me. I think I had 4 or 5 that they picked up, so it actually was like pretty successful. And this article in particular got a lot of views, and I actually had people reach out to me and be like, "Ben, is this you?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's Ben. Look, I got a tag there. It says Benjamin Yoder." Surprisingly, despite being published nearly 10 years ago, it still has my name on it. If you don't know, in the publishing space online, very rare your name stays on an article long term like that. So anyways, so that's the first story of how this thing came to be. It's unfortunate that this comment is here though, because I basically anything that was within that category got placed with this comment, because I can't show people this, or at the time, at least when I was trying to pitch people, I couldn't really show people this, because it looks like I just posted something to the community and then it didn't do anything. But no, they picked it up and they ran it. But whenever they switched over, whenever they shut down, I think GamesBeat specifically, I mean, GamesBeat seems to be what this is still labeled as, so I don't know. I think at one point they had dropped that tag. Yeah, they kind of blanket reverted all those published community articles into normal community articles. So rest in peace. I'm curious, does this Twitter link still work? Does this go to my actual Twitter? Oh no, that's like to share. Okay, gotcha. Anyways, so yes. Second story for this is that this is just more of a mundane story. Is that with Animal Crossing New Leaf, I like the concept of Animal Crossing games a lot, but I personally have had harder and harder times really enjoying them. I think that comes from, I don't know if I necessarily like the direction that they've gone in. And I also feel like they're really, really slow in like changing with each game as well. I feel like I want more out of Animal Crossing games. So New Leaf was when I really first started to feel this. I did play City Folk and also what was it called, the DS one, Wild World. But I feel like this is the first one that I really was questioning whether I should pick it up. And it's kind of funny because I was going to Best Buy to go buy it. And on the way to Best Buy, there's like this section of the road we have where there's just basically these two, like it's like a divider. And like it had two like turnaround points or whatever. So, or like a point that you could do a U-turn. And so I was driving there and I was like almost about to turn onto the highway. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. And I did my little U-turn driving back. And it's a fairly long strip of like this divider until you can turn back around. So I was driving back and then I was like, oh, God dang it, I can go pick it up. So I went and did a U-turn. And I did it again, so I went around the thing twice before I was like, all right, we're just going to go to Best Buy to go pick up New Leaf. So technically this article made like, I think $25 or something, so it kind of paid for itself to some degree, not entirely. But unfortunately, you need to get $100 to the AdSense before you actually can take the money out. And none of my other articles did particularly well. So anyways, old man talking aside, let's read this article. I have not looked at this thing in a long time. So I don't know the quality. I might, depending on how this goes, I might just read through it real quick. I think this is an article that, is not so much about like, hey, let's review Animal Crossing New Leaf. It is like a very particular experience of how the nightlife killed my Animal Crossing New Leaf town kind of thing. So after 3 months of Animal Crossing New Leaf, I've given up. As I type this now, I am taking the cartridge out of my Nintendo 3DS, putting it in the box, and shelving it in my immense backlog of unplayed and unfinished games. I've played both the original Animal Crossing and City Folk extensively. Bug and fish collecting has never been my thing, but I've gotten fully upgraded houses, stores, and some oddities here and there, like a golden axe in City Folk. At about 53 hours of New Leaf, I've earned enough to build a house with 4 rooms of various sizes, 3 bridges, town developments like the coffee shop, and the second floor of the museum. 2 major factors are preventing me from really grinding into New Leaf's time and money. I'm in an unfortunate position of working night shift. I regularly arrive home about 2 to 3 a.m. This wasn't a problem when the TNT Mart, that's the store in Animal Crossing, is like I don't remember their names, Tom Nook's kids. The TNT Mart was a convenience store as it stayed open until the wee hours of the morning. I could go home, pop open New Leaf, and go about my Animal Crossing day, bathed in moonlight. Over time, things changed. A blue drape covered the shop. The next day, when I logged in after work, I found the store closed before the store that I work at was. Unlike past versions, the TNT Mart cannot be downgraded. I can continue to play, but dealing with my inventory management without being able to sell goods is a pain. This is especially troublesome if I don't get to play during daylight for several days. While New Leaf has a lot of new content to discover, money plays an even greater role than in past installments. I simply cannot keep up with all the house upgrades and town projects. In past titles, I could see a glorious, carefree future ahead of me. In New Leaf, the debt is overwhelming. My income largely consists of foreign fruits that grow every few days, the excavated remains of the past generations of town citizens, and my daily abuse of town rocks. If I have time, I rob my local waters and wildlife for profit. Geez, Ben. It takes a long while for me to actually pay anything off, especially if I only get the opportunity to sell goods once or twice a week. It wouldn't be so bad if my fellow animal friends helped me donate a significant amount of money to projects, but they rarely pitch anything more than a few bells. There are a few ways around this. I could always do the old-fashioned tweaking of the game's internal clock, but that contradicts the spirit of Animal Crossing, a second life that runs parallel to your own, at least in terms of time. I'm also aware that I can sail home with a literal boatload of cash from the tropical island, but without a store open, I can't cash out multiple times a night. I'm limited by my storage. Am I in the minority? I am in the minority, but I wish New Leaf was more accommodating for a night owl like me. In some ways, it makes the game more realistic. If I went to town after work in real life, the only thing I'd find open is a Walmart. it's time for me to get a new job so I can properly enjoy Animal Crossing. I will say from me, this writing is actually kind of out of character. It would probably was me trying. I seem to recall maybe around this time, I was reading some other people's writings on, I think, I forget what website it was, but it's the website with the guy who did the zero punctuation thing. I think they had a very similar program to what I just talked about earlier with VentureBeat, where they like would let you submit articles. And I think somebody on there wrote in a very like flamboyant way. Maybe is the right word. I don't know. And so I wonder if part of this was like me being like looking at that and being like, I should try to spunk up my text a little bit. So, anyways, yeah, I think that's like kind of a weird way for me to write about a game. I don't really write about games this way anymore. I don't know if this is a good way to write about games. I am very straightforward with my writing. If you don't know, when I started learning to write, it was all through news writing. So that's probably, if you're ever like, Ben sounds really dry in his writing. That's probably why. And honestly, it's something that I still struggle with today, is like making sure that I add my personality into something. And, sometimes that's successful, sometimes it's not. Something I think I do all the time that I don't think necessarily succeeds is I will, like leave my laughs in on videos and stuff if I laugh to something I wrote. But sometimes I have to cut it for pacing, and so it sounds really weird unless I re-record the line or something. So, but yeah, anyways, to kind of reflect on the article itself, though, a couple of things in here that I thought was worth kind of pointing out. One is I did not mention Wild World here. Actually, did not spend as much time with Wild World as I thought I would. I think this was largely, if I recall correctly, because you had to share a house, and I was playing with my sister, and for some reason I just felt it was not exactly like as my house as it could have been. So I felt like I was less motivated to really get into Wild World. That being said, I think that also may have just been me, kind of getting a little like, hey, this is maybe a little too much like the typical Animal Crossing formula. I think very like mid to late 2000s Nintendo during DS and Wii, whenever they kind of iterated on a franchise, I was kind of disappointed, and I don't think at the time I really knew why. And that's why things like Blue Stinger coming into my life around like 2008 or something was really important. Because I think games like Wild World were disappointing me. Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart Wii, and things like that too. Mario Galaxy did not disappoint me. I love Mario Galaxy. I was surprised. I mean, I did play a lot of New Leaf. Like 53 hours is not a little amount of New Leaf. I think that's something that I need to always keep in mind with Animal Crossing games, because I do put a lot of time into them. But yeah, like it just feels like when you play these games, it feels like you're supposed to play a lot more than that. And so I think often I have a hard time figuring out like what I consider like beaten when I play Animal Crossing games. I feel like it's something that I think changes on my backlog a lot, because like I change the definition of what's beaten in Animal Crossing all the time, right? Sometimes it's like literally just like, oh, I saw KK Slider, but that's like kind of a iffy one. It depends on the game too. Like New Leaf, I think it's a little more, not New Leaf, sorry, New Horizons, I think is what it's called, is a little more understandable, because that's kind of the end of like the introductory period of the game, where you're going through learning everything about the game, and then that you kind of unlocked your ability to do anything and everything for the most part. Admittedly, it's a very long path in New Horizons, so I kind of feel comfortable in saying, hey, I beat New Horizon, even though there's no defined end to it, right? And I think sometimes I've also defined it as like I've paid off my house in its entirety. But like as these games have kind of ballooned to be more about than just your house and more about your town, actually like investing money into every component of the game. Like I said in this article, actually, I mentioned it here somewhere, that like this is probably one of the most like grindiest games. Like the debt is overwhelming, kind of thing. I feel like New Leaf was the start of that, because I think a lot of it because it becomes more town focused rather than your house focused. It's more about your community rather than just your personal build up within New Leaf, which I think is a good thing, in that people who like the franchise enjoy that. I personally am kind of iffy on that aspect of it, but I don't think that my personal feelings really I don't think I'm saying that I wouldn't want them to do it either. I prefer them to do that over just like, focusing on your house, honestly. I just don't know if it like particularly interests me, kind of thing. So, and yeah, I mentioned in here, like this is when I was working at Wendy's as well. So, And then there's a career page down here if you want to get a job. So yeah, I was working the nightlife, and I just couldn't really like log in to sell stuff, and that was kind of frustrating for it. So it was an interesting article. I think this is probably one of the most like I mean, obviously this is 3 months after the fact, but this feels like an article that like a website would want. I don't think I often make things that people would want, honestly. I usually make something out of my own personal passion, and then that I use that thing that I've made to kind of speak for the value of that, where I have a really hard time, I think, kind of presenting the value, something like that ahead of time. And I think this article, probably did well because it was very aimed at, I think, an audience that would be interested in hearing about this kind of experience. I guess that's the other thing too, is like, I'm not necessarily saying that's like there's anything wrong here in New Leaf. I am just saying like, here's my situation and here's my experience that I had because of that. And I think that's like a smarter way to approach, criticism in games often, because sometimes somebody can have a different experience than you, and that can result in different like things. Like, obviously I do complain about the fact that you can't downgrade the store, which was something that you could do in previous titles, at least according to what I'm saying here. I don't know like how confident, I don't know how much research I did into that to make sure, so I'm just like scrolling up and down on this page. I'm not sure how much research I did in that, honestly. But yeah, it is something that I think is important, is to make sure when you're talking about games, it's like very much talk about it within your experience, and don't make that assumption that everybody else's experience is going to be the same, because what they need and value is very different. I think that's a big thing that informed my Xenoblade Chronicles 3 video that came out a while ago, because that video was like, hey, I'm in this very particular group of people, and this is my opinion on how this would, like, this is my opinion because I'm in this group of people, where, I expect the majority of people who play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are very happy with it and satisfied with it. So yeah, but anyways, that's enough rambling about this article, though. Thank you for joining me on revisiting this. I had forgotten that this article was so successful until I randomly pulled it. I was like, oh yeah, this thing did all right. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me. And thank you again for subscribing to the Patreon and supporting me. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I cannot get this VentureBeat money out because I did not make enough money from this article. Only $25. So I mean, that tells you something. If a successful article from my perspective is like, oh yeah, it also got $25, right? Like, unfortunately, on the scope of what I have done in the past, something like this, or at least, after Gamer Feed, I think is what the website was called for VG charts. After that, I largely have been operating on low numbers, but that's life, the life of somebody writing about video games on the internet, right? So anyways, thank you guys again. Hope you have a great week. Bye.